The movie opens up in a cold, dark room as our hero, Choi Ye-jae, kneels down on the floor, crying. He begs for mercy and asks what he did to deserve this. Soon, a woman with a gun walks up to him and coldly replies that he's guilty of trying to find her before she comes to find him. She then points her gun at him and shoots him right between the eyes. But instead of dying, he miraculously falls off a plane and even opens his eyes. Following this, we're taken to 7 years before the incident. A motivated Ye-jae is going for an interview with one of South Korea's biggest companies, Taekang. He's yet to graduate, and this job will help him pay the huge college fees. Even his girlfriend, Lee Ji-soo, is sure that he'll get the job and wishes him good luck. Unfortunately, a middle-aged man runs past him into the busy traffic and gets slammed by a car. The man grabs Ye-jae and tries to say something with his blood-filled mouth, but dies instantly. This traumatizes our hero so much that he ends up failing his interview. The consequences of not getting selected are harsh, as Ye-jae now has to work several odd jobs to pay off his huge student debts. After several years of hardship, he lands another final round interview in Taekang. While other interviewers laugh, the main man seems impressed by his hustle, and Ye-jae leaves feeling optimistic. But as soon as he gets out of the interview, he gets a distressing call. A friend had convinced him to gamble all his savings on a business, but the whole thing turned out to be a scam. Now Ye-jae doesn't have any money for his future wedding. He also can't sue his friend because he had invested for profit. On his way home from the police station, he sees Ji-soo getting out of a luxury car with a man who hands her a bouquet. Ye-jae feels like a burden to his girlfriend, so he decides to break up on the spot. Later that night, things get even worse as his landlord leaves a note on the door telling him to find a new place. As if this wasn't enough, a message informs him that he is not selected for the job at Taekang. With everything wrong happening in his life, Ye-jae decides to end it all. He writes a suicide note stating that he's not afraid of death as it is a solution to his problems. Then he jumps off a building and falls to his death. In the next scene, Ye-jae wakes up in a private jet in a completely different body. The same woman he saw in the first scene is sitting next to him, and she reads his suicide note. She reveals herself as Death, an immortal being who takes souls for judgment and transports him to the top of a scary dark pillar. Death says that Ye-jae, who is now in his own body, mocked her by calling her a tool to end his pain. As a consequence, he will suffer severe punishments even before he can face his judgment by God. Mercilessly, she throws him into an abyss full of man-eating demons ready to feast on him. But before his body hits the water, he wakes up once again in the private jet back in the different body. Here, Death announces his punishment. He will die 12 times, and every time, his soul will enter a different body. Regardless of what he wakes up in, he will face imminent death and experience the pain all over again. However, if he manages to escape his predestined death, he can carry on living life in that body. Ye-jae is shocked and confused to hear all this, but before he can say anything, Death vanishes. The plane then suddenly experiences turbulence, but it stabilizes soon after. Slightly relieved, he discovers that he's in the body of Park Jin-tae, the son of Taekang's CEO. Just then, a small diamond-like orb enters his head and all the memories flood into his mind. Park Jin-tae has been competing all his life with his elder brother, the same man who looked impressed with Ye-jae during his interview at Taekang before his death. After outdoing his brother in everything, Jin-tae is now undergoing training to become the next CEO. Meanwhile, Ye-jae is thrilled that he can finally live as the CEO of the company, something which he has always dreamt of. But little does he know that this is a punishment, and it is only the beginning of a life-changing journey. Soon enough, one of the engines of the plane blows up, and flying debris from the explosion opens a hole on the side of the plane. The pilot and the air hostess get sucked out, leaving him alone, strapped tight to his seat. As a fire rips through the entire plane, Jin Tae burns horribly and eventually dies. Ye-jae wakes up in the same dark room that we saw in the first scene, with death waiting for him. She has 11 bullets left, one each for the remaining lives he has to live and painfully die. After his last death, he will be thrown into hell, and death gives him a terrifying preview of the fiery chasms of hell. But there's a way out. The diamond-like orb gives him memories and skills of the body his soul hops into. If he manages to escape death, his actions during that lifetime will be judged by God, not by death, and may be given a lifeline. Ye-jae is determined to fight for his slim chance at life, and is ready to hop into his next body. But the only way to do so, a bullet to the head by death. In the next scene, he awakens in the body of Song Jae-seob, a professional daredevil attempting an insane 8,000-meter skydive without a parachute. His aim is to land on a safety net installed near the ground, and if he's successful, he bags a massive 300 billion won cash prize. Armed with Song's memories and skills, Ye-jae feels a surge of confidence. The TV ratings start to rise as audiences all over the world watch this through his personal streaming service. But in a cruel twist, Song crashes headfirst into the solid ground, killing him instantly. Meanwhile, we get a quick scene that takes us to a spot of an accident where there are 2 dead bodies. A paramedic reveals that the body of the woman is a mess to look at, but there is something weird happening as we see Ye-jae's passport-sized photo near the woman's purse. The scene then cuts to our hero, who is back in the cold, dark room with death after his recent head-splitting accident. Realizing that he cannot change his fate, Ye-jae apologizes for seeing death as a mere tool to end his life. However, she says that it's too late to apologize, for he has committed a sin that has even angered God. Now, if he doesn't find out his sin and correct it, he'll be thrown into hell, even if he manages to survive this punishment. With a bullet to his head, Ye-jae is then transported to the body of troubled high schooler Kwon Hyuk-soo right before he's about to commit suicide. Hyuk-soo, who is raised in a struggling home by a single mother, is regularly bullied by bigger and stronger classmates. Now that Ye-jae is inside his body, he manages to beat down the school bully, Lee Jin-sang. However, he's eventually overpowered by another guy, Tae-seok. At lunch, Ye-jae hatches a plan. He empties his noodle bowl on Jin-sang's head and flees. Humiliated, the school bully goes to the head of the local gang, Seong-hyup, and begs to avenge him. However, when the local boss sees that Jin-sang is afraid of a thin, small boy, he cuts ties with Jin-sang, ashamed to be associated with a loser. In the aftermath, everyone starts mocking Jin-sang, and he's left with no friends. On the other hand, the once troubled Hyuk-soo is now much more eager to go to school. Ye-jae believes that he can finally avoid death and slowly struggle upward from a middle-class family. However, we are once again reminded that 2 things are certain in life: taxes and death. One night, when Hyuk-soo is walking back to his home, an enraged Jin-sang strikes him with a stone and crushes his head. This kills him on the spot, and Ye-jae is again sent back to death. As the two converse, she reminds him that the upcoming lives will be even more painful. She then shoots him in the head, and his soul is now transported into Lee Ju-hun, a 35-year-old fixer who does all the dirty work for a gang, including murder. Currently, he's held in a hostage situation, surrounded by gang members who are interrogating him. It's revealed that after he saw his lover, Yeon-jae, suffer at the hands of the gang, Ju-hun stole 10 billion won from his boss and planned to flee with her. However, he was caught right after hiding the money, and that is how he landed himself in this current situation. Using his fighting skills, Ju-hun escapes on a bike, but as death reminds him, things are not as easy as they look. His boss puts a 2 billion won bounty on his head, so now trackers all over the city are hot in pursuit. We then dive straight into an intense chase scene, where our hero manages to stave off hunters with his incredible skills on the motorbike, leaving behind several accidents in his wake. Even when he's caught between a rooftop and his boss, Ju-hun manages to escape with a daring leap into a swimming pool. When he finally manages to get away from his pursuers, he drives to meet Yeon-jae at a pier. Joo-hun now has 10 billion won as well as the love of his life. This makes Ye-jae very hopeful as he thinks he can finally escape death's twisted games. However, in a surprising twist of events, his own girlfriend, Yeon-jae, shoots him in the head, killing him instantly. As Ye-jae wakes up in the dark, cold room once more, Death laughs at him and reveals that Kim Yeon-jae never loved Joo-hun. She only wanted the money. Nevertheless, Ye-jae has a trick up his sleeve. Only he knows where Joo-hun has hidden the money. When he goes back to his next body, he plans on retrieving that money. Ye-jae then smirks right before Death shoots him in the head. Unfortunately, all his mental preparation becomes useless as Ye-jae reincarnates as a prisoner and struggles to unlock his new memories. Later, he learns from his cellmate Kim Ji-young that they both are to be released in 4 days. To his surprise, one of his cellmates is Lee Jin-sang, the high school bully who murdered Hyuk-soo. Aware of his past, Ye-jae confronts him when suddenly the memory orb arrives. He is now Cho Tae-sang, once an aspiring MMA fighter who gave up his career because of his family's financial debt. One day, he decided to be the fall guy in a hit-and-run case for a rich guy. He was promised a whopping 200 million won in return. However, when the hit-and-run victim died, his charge was upgraded to manslaughter, landing him 2 years in juvenile prison. Ever since that day, an enraged Tae-sang has been blackmailing the man for 1 billion won, threatening to spill the beans if he doesn't comply. Unbeknownst to him, the attorney places a 100 million won bounty on his head. Meanwhile, Ye-jae exposes the psychopath Jin-sang's past deeds in front of everyone. This results in him getting bullied by other inmates. Ye-jae now plans to simply survive his final days as Tae-sang by keeping his temper under control. But his blackmail scheme bites him back as inmates, driven by the greed of the bounty on his head, plan to kill him. When he gets into a fight, Ye-jae discovers Tae-sang's hidden fighting prowess and starts appreciating his new body's strength. 4 days pass and Ye-jae is finally free from prison. He rejects the 1 billion won blackmail payout and sets his sights on a bigger prize, Joo-hun's hidden 10 billion. After a quick trip to the pier, he easily finds the money and takes a nap in his room. As he's sleeping peacefully, he's woken up by a phone call from Tae-sung's mother. The following morning, Ye-jae stashes half of the money in a public locker. He completely ignores the policy that after 4 days, unclaimed property is seized. He plans to deliver the rest to Tae-sang's mom. However, Ye-jae doesn't realize that someone has been following him ever since he came out of prison. The father of the girl who had been killed in the accident has been waiting for his revenge for 2 years. Fueled by vengeance, he ambushes him and stabs him, dropping an injured Tae-sang to the ground. Ye-jae stammers an apology, desperate to explain, but approaching footsteps cut him off. It is none other than his prison friend, Ji-young. Turns out he has always been after the bounty on his head and brutally plunges his blade into Tae-sang, killing him on the spot. Back at the familiar dark cold room, Ye-jae breaks down but quickly gathers himself together. Determined to get back the money he hid in the locker, he asks Death to quickly kill him and send him back to Earth. With a malicious smirk on her face, she obliges and sends his soul inside the body of an infant who cannot even speak. On top of that, the parents of the baby are extremely abusive as the mother constantly throws temper tantrums and the father tries to feed him expired food. When the police visit their home after complaints from the pediatric hospital, Ye-jae cries as that is the only way of attracting attention. However, the father, who also works with child protection services, manages to convince the policemen of their innocence. As soon as they leave, the mother strangles her own baby with a pillow, and Ye-jae quickly returns back to the dark room. Before Death shoots him in the head one more time, she gives him a stark warning. He is not allowed to kill anyone, no matter what the circumstances. The next scene takes us in front of the train station, where Ye-jae had kept the money in a locker. Right before the deadline expires, he retrieves the bag and catches his glimpse in the mirror. He's now reincarnated as Jang Gyun-woo, a 24-year-old model who has no scarcity of either girls or money. With this new handsome face and a bag full of cash, Ye-jae decides to join a party later that night. There, a friend reveals that Gyun-woo has a chance to model for Tae-kang if he gets on the good side of the company's new CEO, Park Tae-woo. Later, the CEO comes face to face with our hero, but a drunk Gyun-woo cannot pinpoint where he saw his face. In reality, he's the same man who complimented Ye-jae at Tae-kang's interview the night before he committed suicide. The next morning, while helping Gyun-woo's older brother in his cafe, Ye-jae sees Jisoo and goes into a flashback of all the moments they spent together. Later, the elder brother reveals that she comes here every day and is a famous author. In a quick flashback scene, we see Jisoo always wanted to be an author and her boyfriend, Ye-jae, encouraged her to realize her dreams. Back at the cafe, after a quick search on the internet, Gyun-woo goes to the library and finds her book, To You in the Future. From that day onwards, Ye-jae starts meeting with her daily, pretending to be a fan who has a story stuck in his head. He tells her about death and the incidents that he's gone through in the form of a story, but hides the name of the protagonist. One night after seeing her off, Gyun-woo hears news of an accident near the cafe. Scared, he rushes to the spot and sees a red umbrella at the scene, like the one he gave Jisoo. Thankfully, he finds her safe, and their bond deepens as she shares her experience of Ye-jae's suicide day. The next day, driven by remorse, Ye-jae visits his own grave as Gyun-woo. There, he encounters his mother, who rushes to the bathroom after being unable to control her tears. The sight shatters him, and for the very first time after his death, he confronts the consequences of his choice. Later that night, he secretly sends his mom the money he had hidden and has a nightmare where he dies after a signboard falls on his head. After his next meeting with Jisoo, Ye-jae offers to walk her home and reminisces about the times he walked hand in hand with her. He realizes that he may not live much longer. Therefore, Gyun-woo confesses that he's the man in the stories that he's been telling her and reveals about his first life as Ye-jae. But before an emotional Jisoo can wrap her head around his confession, a red car violently crashes into them. Jisoo dies on the spot, while Gyun-woo is badly hurt but still alive. The man who nonchalantly comes out of the car is none other than Park Tae-woo. We get a quick flashback scene. Park Tae-woo has been involved in the murder of every single reincarnation of Ye-jae in one way or the other. He then suffocates Gyun-woo to death as we see that a passport-sized photo of Ye-jae has dropped out of Jisoo's purse. This is the accident site we've been seeing throughout the movie. In the final scene, Ye-jae gets back to death and notices her reading Jisoo's book, To You in the Future. In a fit of rage, he grabs her gun and points at her, asking if she's enjoying it.